everyone, welcome to our next creativity video. As you guys have seen across our social media, we've been looking at creativity and how we can use that to really connect with and to glorify God, which is just super exciting. And hopefully you've seen some of our other content as well and all the other creative people who have been involved. So yeah, just encourage you guys to go and have a look at that if you haven't already. But for this video, I'm here with Dom. So Dom, why don't we start by you introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about who you are and what you get up to?
Sure. So I suppose I'm Dominic Crutchley, and the really corporate way of introducing myself is that I'm a senior consultant at a company called Cambridge Consultants, which means day to day I'm a software engineer. I design big software systems. That's my phone, so I apologise for that. And I help clients to build large systems. We bring I suppose complicated ideas to reality, things that people don't know how to do. We go and do them for them. But I generally I'm just I suppose you call me a geek or a nerd. I'm into tech, so I'm sat here surrounded by screens, as you pointed out before we started. And I help out at church, like you might expect. So I'm on the PA team. I help run the PA desk, which has been super complicated for the last couple of years because we've had to start doing video streaming and stuff like that, which has been new and exciting. And I suppose the other thing worth mentioning is occasionally I get involved in running radio stations. So last Christmas I helped run a local radio station for our church over Christmas because of the pandemic, to try and sort of draw the community together. And also in the summers I help out at Transformers, which is a Scripture Union holiday, which I should have mentioned first because that's how you found me. There you go. I think that's everything in a nutshell.
Let me just draw on that point for a second. Tell us a little bit about Transformers and what
Sure.
what that looks like.
Okay. Yeah, so Transformers is a holiday with Scripture Union for teenagers interested in computing and electronics. So we do all sorts of activities around computing, so programming, obviously, but also stuff you might not expect. So we do video editing, we do audio production, we do photography. And what's really interesting about it, and the reason you're talking to me, is because the holiday is actually very creative. So it's based around technology, but we really spend a lot of our time being creative with the different technical gifts that people have. And so there's other holidays that Scripture Union run, things like Voice. I know there's a drama group called Footlights, that kind of thing. And we're not those. We don't put on big shows and things like that, but we do focus on the sort of the technical side of similar creative skills.
Love it. It genuinely sounds really awesome.
It's great. I've been going for years, since I was young enough to be a young person. So I think my first year was in 1999, and I'm still going. It's been a bit rough the last couple of years, but because we've had to do it online, but we're still going. We're looking forward to being able to get sort of back together. We normally meet in a boarding school. And I think the main thing we've noticed over the pandemic is that it's been great, and we can still do wonderful things, but it's not quite the same as getting in a room with people. The sort of the fun aspect goes out of it a little bit, which is a shame.
Yeah, well done for keeping it up like throughout the pandemic, because I think like it's so awesome that you've been able to do that. And I guess for anyone who's watching, I guess you can find out information about that on the Scripture Union website. And do you have your own website as well, Transformers?
Oh, we do. The easiest one to remember is xf.org.uk.
xf.org.uk. Amazing. So for any of you techies out there, you can find out more about that on there. So obviously you've talked a little bit about like programming and tech and all these different things. So how do you enjoy being creative, just individually? I guess not necessarily what you've been dragged into because of your skills. And yeah, can you tell us a little bit about like how that creativity feeds into your faith as well?
Oh, that's complicated, isn't it? You've asked both questions at the same time. So I suppose the best thing I can say about being creative technically, I mean, obviously the stuff you can do with audio and visual, you can make sound, you can make pictures, and there's emotion you can bring to people. But I actually really enjoy sort of the pure programming element. So there's something odd about how you code or program with a computer, which is that you're taking a system that only really has two states. So it's true and false, it's 0 and 1, and you sort of, everybody's familiar with that idea that computers just deal with zeros and ones. But from that, you build possibilities and you give people the illusion of choice, and you create pictures. So, you know, you can provide interfaces, you can give feedback, you can really make, you can express kind of that range of things, and yet underneath it all, it's still very simple progressions, and it's logical and it flows. So I find it interesting that, for instance, I suppose a lot of people will be familiar with things like screens these days. Are all digital now. You know, those pictures, those videos are all bought out of single decisions that are being made millions of times a second. And one of the things I find fulfilling, for instance, in my work, I've been lucky enough to work on some satellite communication systems in my time, and there is some programming code somewhere in the universe, and its job is to convert data that's passing over the satellite into a different form. And those simple bits of code I wrote that are probably only a few hundred lines, they have to run over and over again, thousands and thousands of times for all those users. And I find it really mind-boggling to think about that kind of stuff. And that's where I think it starts to touch on my faith and the scale of things that you do, that when you try and, I suppose so everybody who thinks about God, I think, probably at some point tries to fathom how big God is, which is a thing that, you know, we know is impossible to do. God is vast and beyond comprehension, but you still try, and it still breaks your head every time you do it. Yeah. And I find that when I think about things like, you know, how much duplication there will be of things that I've done and where it goes, and I can't quite comprehend how big that is, that gives me kind of a handle on the situation. It helps me to comparing's the wrong word, because you can't, but you know it's even bigger than that, if you know what I mean. And I find that really interesting. I also find that some of what I do sort of is directly, it directly relates to others and sometimes helps with their faith. So when, you know, when I've run radio stations with the church, there's a very clear and obvious link there that, you know, so in the background, I'm moving wires and writing bits of programs and helping people figure out how to get to radio station on the air. But the message that we're bringing is important, and you can see that affect people. Or when I'm helping at my church just regularly on a Sunday, and I might be working the PA desk or helping them figure out how to get the live stream out, you know, you can feel that you have a direct effect on people's worship, and that's really powerful too. I find there's lots of different ways, from the kind of affecting other people all the way down to the personal, where I find that this expression helps me think and process about my faith and what it means to me.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you draw on those two different kind of points, where that's because it's something that's so vast that you're working on when you're referring to like the codes that you've written that have been used so many, like probably thousands, millions of times, and how God is so much bigger than that. But then you've also got that direct link, like how can I use this to share this with others? So moving on from that a little bit, I'd like to ask you for a couple of pieces of advice for those who are watching. So the first one is like, what would your advice be to young people who are watching this and want to use like this avenue of creativity? So, I mean, you talked a lot about programming, so maybe we can use that as the example. So how can they use that to express their personal worship and spend time in God's presence? So that's the first one. I'm going to ask you both in one go, make it complicated again.
Right.
And then second one is, what about young people who want to explicitly use those gifts to share their faith? So you've got personal worship and building a relationship with God and sharing faith. So what would your advice be to young people who want to do those things?
Should have rehearsed the answers to these, shouldn't we? I've got to think now. So I would say, personal things are personal, which sounds like a trite answer, but I think if if it's something you enjoy, so coding or programming, if that's something that you find interest in, and how I suppose at this point, how do you know that you're interested in it? Well, does it intrigue you? When you read that tutorial online or whatever it is, however you're picking it up, do you want to know more? Is it that you feel kind of pulled into it? Do you find that when you're thinking about it or working with it, that you have that curiosity and you reach that place that sort of people talk about where you get flow, where you're just you're just in the moment and you're doing it and the kind of stuff drops away? Because I think if you're getting there, then actually you probably are quite close to worshipping. And like, being engrossed in a task can be very good for prayer and talking to God. And so really the best advice, I think, to express yourself personally is find a part of it that you really enjoy and keep doing it. Practice, find more excuses to do it, get more involved, learn more things about it, because there's always more to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's, if you find that enjoyable, I suspect that you will naturally draw meaning out of it, actually. So I know for a lot of the young people who go through like Transformers, for instance, they come to us and we teach Python most often. So a lot of them are programming sort of 2D games, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Nothing groundbreaking, but it's deeply interesting to them, and the learning experience is something that we're able to do in concert with sort of the other, I suppose, more religious activities that go on when you're on a holiday like that, because we have defined Bible study and things like that. But these creative periods in the middle are really important. And then you asked sort of about explicitly using your gifts. So I suppose if you really want to explicitly use your gift for God, that's something I struggle with even myself now. So I've forgotten what I said at the beginning, but I've definitely done wonderful things in my past that have been very directly like I'm programming for God, I suppose you could say. As cheesy as that sounds, that I've written code that's been specifically to do with making sure something to do with worship was working or getting a message out there. Those opportunities are really hard to find. And if that's your heart, I'd say search them out, obviously, and pray about it. I'd also say don't worry too much, because I would tell you from experience that that's what I used to do. I went to university up in Manchester. I'm in Cambridge at the minute. And when we were, all the time I was up in Manchester, my prayer regularly was that I really wanted to be able to use my specific skills, my technical skills for God, because I really couldn't see how that was going to work. I couldn't figure out like how am I going to manage to use this skill set for God. I'm searching for mundane jobs, doing stuff. I need money. There's practicalities. I need to get a job somewhere when I finish university, and I'm not about to be I don't have the ability to just say, I'm just going to go and work for a charity who bizarrely need a programmer and go and do all this stuff for God. It wasn't an option. And then I got to the point where I'd found a job, and we were moving. And I remember when we were leaving, sort of the final day we were at church up there, that kind of thing, it suddenly hit me that for whatever number of years it was, I'd been helping run this radio station every year, and that I'd been involved in things like Transformers, and actually it happened and I hadn't noticed, and I'd been worrying about it the whole time. So praying about it would definitely be my advice, that the opportunities would be there, and that you'd recognize them once you found them.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I think so many people get caught up in that, oh, I should be doing something that is really explicitly kind of faith-based, or I want to be using it to share the gospel, and people can get really caught up in that, when actually what you said earlier has really stuck with me, actually, that feeling when you're doing something that you're really excited about and you're really passionate about, and you feel everything else fall away and you're just really engrossed in that task, like that can be really worshipful as well. And so I guess it's bearing in mind that actually you can be really worshipful and essentially glorify God in whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's something that is kind of faith-based or whether it's not. And so yeah, I think that's something that's really key, that certainly I'll be taking away anyway. So yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. I'm going to be honest, I know absolutely nothing about programming at all, and so I've probably learned a few things along the way, but thank you for being on here and for sharing your thoughts. We really appreciate it.
Right.
And yeah, to everyone who's watching, I hope this inspires you to go and have a look through the other things that that we've recorded. We've got lots of different forms of creativity in our videos, and yeah, I hope that you guys find it really inspiring, and that you find different ways of really glorifying God through your daily lives.